Welcome back to the deep dive. It is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026, and today we are opening the file on part 3 of our serialized look at the work of Jafar Humayun.
It is good to be back.
Yeah, we're jumping right back inside the AI futures framework, and I have to be honest with you, just looking at the notes for this one, I'm feeling a little called out.
Well, feeling called out is usually a pretty good sign that we're getting to the good stuff.
Hmm.
But before we get into that discomfort, I think it's crucial, right at the top, to remind everyone of the mantra we established back in the first part of this analysis.
Right, the core framing. AI futures is not a forecast, it's a framework.
Exactly. I mean, we aren't trying to predict exactly what stock price is going to jump next Tuesday or, which job title gets automated by March. We're trying to understand the underlying mechanics of how the economy is shifting.
It's about the architecture, not the weather report.
Yeah, exactly.
And just to quickly orient you, if you're joining us midstream, though, seriously, you should go back and listen to episode 2. We unpacked the cognitive tier framework.
All right, that was the structural hierarchy of labor. We established that Tier 2, which is that procedural, rule-based work that is facing rapid substitution by AI.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Tier 3,
Which is the systemic architectural thinking.
right, that remains, for now, safely human.
We drew that line between doing the thing and designing the thing. But today, we're zooming in on a very specific friction point that Humayun identifies. The title of this deep dive is The Cognitive Elasticity.
And this is where the anxiety kicks in for a lot of people.
Yeah, completely. Because the logical reaction to our last deep dive is just, okay, well, Tier 2 is automating. I'll just move to Tier 3. I'll just, climb the ladder.
And that assumption is exactly what today's analysis dismantles. Humayun suggests that it's not a ladder. It might not even be the same building.
We're looking at what he describes as a structural friction. It's this conflict between the human mind, specifically how we've been trained for the last century, and the demands of this new AI-driven economy.
Precisely. We really need to look at this as a legacy system overlap. So we have a workforce running on one operating system, let's call it the Standardized Cognition model, and it's trying to interface with the new economy that requires a completely different architecture.
Legacy system overlap, that sounds very polite.
Well, it's intended to be descriptive, not judgmental. The core conflict is that the training models we've used for decades, they optimize humans for a world that is becoming obsolete. But, and this is a really key point, it wasn't a mistake at the time.
So let's unpack this, because the source material starts with a character we all know, the model student. And I mean, I was this student. I think a lot of the people listening right now are probably this student too.
Oh, absolutely. The model student is the archetype of success for the 20th and early 21st centuries. Just think about the traits we praise in schools and early corporate roles. You follow the rules. You optimize for safety. You believe that discipline beats talent.
Right. Sit still, listen to the teacher, memorize the answer, get the A.
Because compliance bred safety. The implicit promise of society was that if you just followed the track, if you did everything right and didn't rock the boat, there was a guaranteed place for you. But Humayun points out a really hard truth here. That track ends at Tier 2.
And Tier 2 is where AI lives now.
That's the crux of the issue. The model student was designed to be a perfect Tier 2 agent, reliable, consistent, and completely deferential to the manual.
It's incredibly ironic when you think about it. The very things that made someone the ideal employee, even just 10 years ago, sticking to the process, not asking annoying questions, just getting the volume of work done, those are the exact traits that represent the highest surface area for AI substitution today.
It is a massive vulnerability. And we do have to be careful with the tone here because it is so easy to feel angry about this or to feel this acute sense of structural misalignment like the system made a promise it can't keep. But we have to view this systematically. It wasn't some malicious plot to trap workers. Schools and corporate structures were designed to produce reliable executors because that is exactly what the industrial economy needed. They needed standardized cognition.
Right, because you don't want the guy on the assembly line or even the junior accountant in the back office, for that matter, getting creative with the process. You want them to follow the rules so the output is perfectly consistent.
Exactly. I mean, Tier 2 minds are incredibly efficient in rule-bound systems. They're great at learning the manual, excellent in repetition, fast at applying established patterns. But here's the pivot. Compliance, repetition, and deference to the manual are now the specific areas where AI excels.
Surface area. You mentioned that phrase earlier from the text.
Yeah, surface area for substitution. Just think about it from a machine's perspective. If a rulebook exists, the AI can read it faster than you. If a pattern exists, the AI can execute it more consistently than you. If the job is literally just follow these steps, the machine is going to win every single time.
So the system worked perfectly for its time. It's just that the time has changed and the system is still printing out model students.
It's the legacy system overlap in action. The output of our education and training institutions is just no longer synchronized with the input requirements of the modern economy.
Which leads us to the big question, and I think this is where the elasticity concept really comes into play. If I'm a tier 2 worker, right, a super efficient rule follower, can I just take a course? Like, can I just upskill my way into tier 3?
This is the part of the source material that directly challenges the most common narrative we hear in corporate learning and development departments. The prevailing myth is that with enough training, anyone can become a systems thinker.
Yeah, we hear it all the time. Reskilling the workforce, learn to code, learn prompt engineering.
Right. But Humayun argues that this ignores how cognition actually works. You cannot simply plug Tier 3 thinking into a mind that has been structurally optimized for Tier 2 for the last 20 years.
Wait, hold on. Why not? Are we saying people just can't adapt? That feels a bit deterministic, doesn't it?
No, not that they can't learn anything new, but we need to distinguish between learning a skill and changing an architecture. Tier 3. That ability to navigate paradigms, handle ambiguity, redesign systems. It is not a skill set like learning Excel or learning French. It's a cognitive architecture.
Okay, that's a heavy term. Break down the difference for me between a skill set and a cognitive architecture.
Let's use an analogy. A skill set is an app. You download it, you use it. You want to learn how to use Salesforce. That's an app. You want to learn how to write a Python script.
Yep.
That's an app.
Okay, I follow that.
But a cognitive architecture is the operating system. It's the BIOS. It's how you process reality before you even open an app. The Tier 2 architecture, the model student, is built on an OS of certainty. It processes the world sequentially. Input, find the rule, generate the output. It craves the correct answer.
It wants to check the back of the book. It wants the teacher or the boss to say, yes, that is correct.
Precisely. Now look at Tier 3, systems thinking. This isn't just knowing more stuff. A Tier 3 mind looks at a problem and sees feedback loops. They see contradictions. They see trade-offs. They don't look for the correct answer. They look for the best navigational path through an ambiguous paradigm.
Paradigm navigation instead of task optimization.
Exactly.
So if I'm understanding the analogy, you can't just install the Systemic Innovation app on the compliance operating system.
The hardware rejects it. Or, more accurately, the OS just crashes. This is what Humayun calls cognitive inelasticity. If a brain has been deeply conditioned to seek certainty and defer judgment, it cannot instantly pivot to redefining the entire problem space. It's just not elastic enough to stretch that far without breaking.
So when we talk about upskilling, we're usually treating it like we're just adding a feature. But what you're saying is we actually need to wipe the drive and install a brand new OS?
And changing an operating system while the computer is actively running is incredibly difficult. This is the myth of universal scaling. We want to believe everyone can seamlessly make this jump because it's a nice, comforting story. It feels fair. But the transition from Tier 2 to Tier 3 isn't a gradual staircase. It's a structural gap, a massive divergence.
The source material mentions that there are these rare ingredients required for Tier 3 cognition. What are we missing in the standard model? Why is this architecture so hard to build?
Well, think about how you build a systems thinker. You need early exposure to paradoxes problems that actually don't have a clear solvable answer. You need the freedom to question authority without the fear of being penalized for disobedience. And most importantly, you need the emotional safety to be wrong.
The emotional safety to be wrong, wow, that one hits home. Because in the standard model, in school and in most corporate environments, being wrong is basically the worst thing you can be.
It's actively penalized. If you're a junior employee and you try an experiment that doesn't pan out, you might get fired. Or at the very least, you get a terrible performance review. So, systemically, we have pruned the Tier 3 tendencies out of people. We trained them to conform, not to redesign.
And now, suddenly, the marketplace is almost zero value on conformity and infinite value on redesign.
Exactly. We have a workforce that is terrified of being wrong. They're waiting for instructions. They're looking for the manual. And now we're abruptly telling them, go invent a totally new workflow.
It's like asking a train to suddenly drive off-road. It's not that the train is a bad vehicle. It's just physically not built for the dirt.
That is the structural mismatch perfectly summarized. And the friction we're all feeling right now, the anxiety you mentioned at the start of the deep dive, is the collective sound of millions of people realizing their tracks have run out and they don't have steering wheels.
The source material has this great table that lays out the differences between these two mindsets. I really want to run through a few of these because I think it helps ground this somewhat abstract idea. It helps us see exactly why this shift is so incredibly hard.
Yeah, let's do it. It's a great breakdown.
Okay, the first comparison. Tier 2 is rule following. Tier 3 is system questioning.
Right. So Tier 2 asks, what is the rule so I can follow it perfectly? Tier 3 looks at the same situation and asks, is this rule even still relevant? Does this rule actually achieve the goal we're aiming for?
And honestly, that is a dangerous question in a lot of corporate meetings.
It is. It's highly disruptive to the status quo.
The next one, task optimization versus workflow rewriting.
This is a huge distinction. A Tier 2 mind tries to do the existing task 10% faster. Maybe they even use an AI tool to write the email faster, but that is still Tier 2 behavior. A Tier 3 mind stops and asks if the email needs to be sent at all, or if that entire workflow can be eliminated or automated from the top down.
Got it. So Tier 2 optimizes the current reality. Tier 3 rewrites the reality. And the last one, which I actually think is the most psychological point here. Certainty seeking versus uncertainty acceptance.
That is the emotional core of this entire issue.
Yeah.
The Tier 2 mind craves the manual. They want the guarantee that if I do X, I will get Y. The Tier 3 mind accepts that we might do X and Y might happen, or Z might happen, or something totally unexpected might happen, and we will just have to navigate the trade-offs when we get there.
It really is the difference between following a map and being an explorer.
And historically, explorers are extremely rare. Most people want the map. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Modern civilization was basically built on people faithfully following maps. The problem is the terrain itself has changed, and the old maps are leading us toward a massive divergence.
Which brings us to the harsh economic reality of all this. Humayun frames this as a fundamental supply and demand issue.
Yeah, it creates a massive saturation in the labor market. We currently have a global surplus of Tier 2 cognition. Why? Because it's measurable. It's manageable. We know exactly how to produce it. Schools pump out Tier 2 minds by the millions every single year.
And on the flip side,
An acute scarcity of Tier 3 designers. Because they are disruptive by nature, and they are incredibly hard to scale. You cannot put paradigm navigation on a standardized multiple-choice test, so you end up with a glut of people who can follow rules perfectly, competing for fewer and fewer rule-following jobs. And simultaneously, you have a desperate shortage of people who can architect systems, with almost no one structurally qualified to fill those roles.
you know, the source describes a profound sense of powerlessness among workers right now, and I feel like that is such an accurate word for the current vibe in the workforce.
It's a deeply valid feeling. Just imagine coming to the realization that your entire education, your entire professional training, was optimizing you for a world that essentially no longer exists. You get all the hard work, you got the right degrees, you put in the long hours, but your mind was structurally built for an executor role that is evaporating.
And the really painful part is hearing the market ask, well, why didn't you just think differently?
Right. And the honest answer from the worker is, I was never allowed to. That was never the deal. The deal was always comply, follow the metrics, and you will be safe.
We do need to be very clear here. We aren't saying this to be depressing or to point fingers. We're framing this entirely as a structural misalignment.
Absolutely. It's not a personal failing. It doesn't mean you aren't smart enough or capable enough. It just means that the incentive structure that trained you is now misaligned with the incentive structure that wants to hire you.
And recognizing that misalignment is the vital first step, right? Because if you think the problem is just that you don't know enough Python, you're going to waste a ton of time learning Python without actually changing your underlying mindset.
Exactly. If you learn Python with a Tier 2 mindset, you are just going to be a slightly faster rule follower until the AI learns Python better than you. You need to shift the focus from merely learning new skills to actually re-architecting your approach to problem solving. It's much harder, yes. It requires undoing years of cognitive inelasticity, but it's the only way to bridge that structural gap.
So as we step back and look at the macroeconomy, we are seeing this intense split, a clear divergence.
We are. On one side, you have machines that execute. They are the ultimate Tier 2 workers. They never get tired. They follow rules with perfect fidelity, and they are infinitely scalable. On the other side, economic relevance now exclusively belongs to the humans who can redesign the systems that those machines are executing.
But the friction that cognitive elasticity problem is that our institutions never scaled the means to actually grow those redesigning minds.
We mass-produced the executors, and now the economy has almost no demand for that specific inventory.
It's a really sobering thought. We have all this incredible cognitive capacity, human brains, that are essentially locked in a mode that is rapidly losing market value.
And that leads me to a final, somewhat provocative thought for this deep dive. If we don't address this elasticity issue, if we don't figure out how to bridge this gap systemically, what happens next?
Lay it on us.
Well, if the lag between technological acceleration and cognitive retraining continues to widen, we risk a divergence not just of income, but of thought itself. We could end up with a very small class of people who can think systemically and actively shape reality, and a massive class of people who can only execute rules that are no longer theirs to write.
A divergence of thought itself, that is, wow, that's big. It's not just about who takes home a bigger paycheck. It's really about who has agency in the future.
Agency is the exact right word. Tier 3 is fundamentally about agency. Tier 2 is about subservience to a given process.
Yeah.
If you cannot redesign the system, you are entirely subject to it.
And that actually brings us to the perfect setup for our next deep dive. Because if we're concluding that the training was the problem, if the model student is the core vulnerability, then we have to go look at the source of that training.
We do. We have to go back to the factory floor of the human mind.
Next time on AI Futures, we are tackling education system misalignment.
The premise for that one is incredibly powerful. The system didn't just miss the mark on preparing us. It succeeded brilliantly at a goal that is no longer relevant. We'll be exploring the success paradox of modern education.
Why being good at school might actually be your biggest hurdle to remaining relevant in the AI age. You definitely won't want to miss that one.
It's going to be a really necessary conversation.
Until then, to
Yes.
everyone listening, thank you for diving in with us today. Stay tuned, stay curious.
Stay systemic.